Bernie Sanders, I have two interviews from him. The first one, he touches on a number of different topics. The second one, he focuses primarily on the 2024 election, but he covers that in both interviews, but there's things that's said in one interview that aren't said in the other interview. So I think that you really need to hear this. You really need to hear this. And there's another breakdown I'm going to do on Sunday. I'm going to do a different type of show on Sunday. We're going to do an analysis. We're really going to analyze what has happened with the progressive movement, what has happened with these so-called progressive politicians that have come into the political space. And we are going to look at why some people are going all in for Marianne Williamson, even though they know this is not a winnable thing for her. And I'm going to break all that down. I have a lot of receipts. I have a lot of clips and things like that. I'm really going to do a deep dive about that on Sunday. But the first interview with Bernie Sanders here was with the BBC, and it says Bernie Sanders on Biden, billionaires, and mittens. We're not going to get into the mittens. I'm sorry. I don't think many people are thinking about mittens right now, considering what's going on financially. So let's go ahead and get into it.
Well, he is the president. If he runs for re-election, I will support him. I think he is in a very strong position and will likely defeat Trump. And I think that the record that he's established, the fights that he's fought, have been very important ones. And I think, unfortunately, on some of the most important issues facing the working class of America, we've had zero support from Republicans. We've had some defections from Democrats, but he has tried his best to improve life.
Let's pause there for just a second and comment on that. He said that he thinks that Biden is the best person to beat Donald Trump. Recent polls say that that's not the case. Recent polling right now shows that Trump is beating Joe Biden. Now, I'm not sure when this interview was recorded, but just to give you that update, right now, the polls show that Trump is beating Joe Biden. But why did they ask him that question? Because obviously, Marianne Williamson announced that she's also running for president. She is going to primary challenge Joe Biden. So Bernie Sanders is letting you know exactly where he stands come 2024 if Joe Biden decides to run again, that he will be supporting Joe Biden. And he's not the only one. The entire Progressive Caucus, we talked about this a couple nights ago, have also said that they will be supporting Joe Biden. So this is a double whammy, obviously, for Marianne Williamson, because where is she going to get that support in reference to the politicians who are already in Congress? And why am I pointing this out? Because one of Bernie Sanders' biggest policy issues is Medicare for all. Joe Biden has gone on record saying that he does not support Medicare for all. He said that if the bill came across his desk, he would veto it. Marianne Williamson does support Medicare for all. She didn't always, but that was an issue she came around on. So she's gone to the Medicare for all marches. She's been speakers at these events as well. So there is a difference in reference to that particular policy. And if Bernie Sanders is as passionate about Medicare for all as he says that he is, why is he going to support the presidential candidate who doesn't want to make it happen? These are questions you need to ask yourself. Let's go on.
Just look at a couple of things before we come on to the book. You said that the US withdrawal from Afghanistan was a courageous step that we strongly support. But look at Afghanistan now. You know, girls aren't in school, women aren't in jobs, the Taliban are back, there's terrorism, there's no justice. Was that a massive mistake?
No, it wasn't. Look, it's a horrible situation. What's gone on in Afghanistan for so long has been a terrible situation. But I think the United States cannot be involved in endless wars. Not in Afghanistan, not in Iraq. The withdrawal was obviously not done as well as it should have been. But I think at the end of the day, the United States cannot be involved in the decision-making of countries all over the world.
But we are and you've backed some of those policy decisions. And what they get wrong here, what she did mention and what he didn't mention, of course, he's not going to, but we talked about this a year ago. The women in Afghanistan were actually better off before U.S. intervention. The policies became more strict towards them after the United States government intervened. We pulled this up on the show. I showed you what women were allowed to wear in the 1970s before this intervention took place. They had a lot more freedom. It was after the U.S. government intervened in Afghanistan that these more strict positions, these stricter rules were put onto those women. Neither one of them are going to mention that. We should have never been there in the first place. Let's go on.
The first anniversary of the war in Ukraine is tomorrow.
What President Zelensky wants is F-16s from the US and the UK. Poland are likely to be sending MiGs. Should America send F-16s?
It's not an issue that I've been heavily involved in, but I support what the president is doing. I think what Putin did was outrageous, not only for the people of the Ukraine and all the destruction, not only for the thousands and tens of thousands of Russian soldiers who have been dying. We need a world now, if we're going to combat climate change, if we're going to combat future pandemics, we need a world to come together. And Putin has radically disrupted that, and that is a real tragedy. But I think at the end of the day, the United States, NATO cannot sit back and allow Putin's aggression to go unresponded to.
If you're going to combat climate change, which is what he just mentioned, then you would not be approving wars at all. Because the military-industrial complex is the largest, single most polluter of the world. This is how you push back on these so-called progressives who say they're champions and fighters for climate change. This is how you push back on them with that issue. You ask them the war question. Ask them about that. Do they support these wars? That's how you can tell if they're serious or not about combating climate change. And Bernie Sanders knows that.
Can we turn now to your observations on Donald Trump? You're clear that you think that most of Trump's supporters weren't actually motivated by racism and bigotry. Do you think the Democrats were wrong to characterize it like that, a bit like Hillary Clinton's deplorable?
Yeah, I was. I think the deeper issue is, if you ask me, are some of Trump's supporters racist? Yes. Sexist? Yes. Homophobes? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, what's happening in the United States, and all over the world, by the way, many of the industrialized countries, is the working class is in serious trouble. People's standard of living is going down at the same time as billionaires are becoming much richer. That is what this book is about. And I think that for many decades now, what the Democratic Party has done is turn its back on the loss of good-paying jobs in the United States, the increase in poverty.
You say that billionaires in America are every bit as dangerous.
And Joe Biden is a part of that, but you said that you'll still support Joe Biden. Do you see how you see at the end of the day, they still just play party politics? They still go along with what the Democratic leadership wants. They go along with the party. You can say all that, Bernie Sanders. You can believe all that. But at the end of the day, you know that you are just going to go along with what the Democratic Party wants. It is really important that people don't fall for this again. Now, it has been said by Ro Khanna that if Joe Biden does not run, then Bernie Sanders will run. You can't fall for this again. He's played this game twice already, twice in a row.
Dangerous as oligarchs surrounding Vladimir Putin. But how can you justify that? Presumably, billionaires in America don't have private armories. They're not necessarily laundering billions of dollars. Who does that?
I didn't say that they were as dangerous. What I said is that in America, what we say is Russia has oligarchs. Do they? Absolutely. Is Putin part of that? Absolutely. But in America, have you heard anyone talk about oligarchy? The answer is we don't. And in the book, we make it clear that you have more concentration of ownership right now in sector after sector than we've ever had. More income and wealth inequality than we've ever had. More corporate control over the media than we have ever have. So when the rich get much richer and have incredible political power, I call that an oligarchy.
So Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk,
yeah.
Bill Gates, are dangerous oligarchs?
They have far too much wealth and far too much power. And
notice again the people that they mention, and this is something I continue to stress to you. Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, and Elon Musk. Again, those are the easy targets. Everybody is aware of them. Everybody is not aware of Larry Fink. Larry Fink, who owns BlackRock. So you have Larry Fink and you have BlackRock. They are more dangerous than Bill Gates, than Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos. And Bernie Sanders won't call him out. And she won't call him out, the woman interviewing him. Do you guys see, how this really works? Nobody, they said BlackRock is what it says, the company that owns everything that most people have never heard of. That's the phrase that people say about BlackRock, right? You know why most people have never heard of them? Because people like Bernie Sanders, when they call out the rich, they don't mention them. When they call out corrupt corporations, they mention Amazon, they mention Walmart, they don't mention BlackRock. And we need to start asking why. The fact that BlackRock has shares in the media, the housing market, the fact that BlackRock can just go up and buy all these foreclosed homes from the '08 housing crisis, and nobody wants to mention them. That's a good point, Miguel. They are scared of BlackRock. Do you see what I'm saying? They are misleading the American people. Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, and Bill Gates are not the people who are the most powerful. One of the most powerful people is Larry Fink, and they won't say his name. What that tells you about people like Bernie Sanders is that he's only willing to go so far. Even Bernie Sanders knows there is a line that he should not cross.
danger is, let me talk about danger. And danger is when you have billionaires who can contribute unlimited amounts of money into the political process and elect the candidates that they want. That is dangerous.
But then you've got billionaires like Bill Gates. You could say what he's done for,
Right.
medical development all over the world.
I know
is
Bill
something
Gates. Bill Gates is a nice guy, but still the
state
point
couldn't do.
Is he worth?
No, see, here's the thing again about the nice guy. So Bernie's going to tell you that Bill Gates is a nice guy. This is the same thing that he said about Joe Biden. I'm sorry, but nice guys don't steal people's water. Nice guys don't steal people's farmland. That's not nice. That's someone who's trying to make a profit. Bernie Sanders needs to call that out. Won't do it.
Is anybody, when you have, should we have a society with so much income and wealth inequality? This is not an attack. I say it in the book. It's not an attack on individuals. It's an attack on a system that allows for that inequality.
But you run in that same system. But you support that same system when you tell people that you're still supporting Joe Biden. You see, it's one thing to call out the problems, but it's another thing to go along with the problem. If Bernie Sanders knows that the system is the issue, why hasn't Bernie Sanders called for some type of mass movement of the people on the outside of electoral politics? If Bernie Sanders knows that the system is the problem, why does Bernie Sanders continue to back and support the politicians that are a part of that same system? Because at the end of the day, even Bernie Sanders he's not revolutionary. He's not. He has tricked people into thinking that he is. Real revolutionaries in this country were killed. Let's be real. Fred Hampton was killed. Malcolm X was killed. Martin Luther King Jr. was killed. And those are just a few, the ones that you know about. If Bernie Sanders was a real revolutionary, Bernie Sanders would not be alive right now today. Let's make that very clear. Because I think we all know it's all been revealed now that the government agencies were responsible for killing the revolutionaries that we had in this country. And when they killed them, they killed the revolutionary energy that we had in this country. And then people were swept up and swept away with Reaganomics. When the revolutionaries died, that made way for neoliberalism.
One of America's big problems are guns. And yet you want to reform the Constitution, but you don't say anything about the Second Amendment. You don't say anything about getting rid of guns. Why
Because
shouldn't
the
it be
vast
like
majority
Canada?
of the people, no, we have people who hunt, people who do target practice, that's all. That's our culture. Your culture may be different. But the danger is that we have people who have guns who are often should not have guns. They are people who have been involved in domestic violence, mentally unstable. And what we have to do is have thorough background checks as to who owns guns.
When you wore mittens to the Biden inauguration, it caused a sensation.
And we're stopping there because the rest of that is not serious and not worth talking about, to be honest with you. Now, that's one interview. There was another interview where he was specifically asked about the 2024 election. People are misleading with this article, and people are not actually reading the article. I've seen this all over Twitter where people are just looking at the headline and getting excited. It says Bernie Sanders says Marianne Williamson will run a strong campaign and raise very important issues in 2024. And if you look on Twitter right now, you'll be able to tell the people who took this, ran with it, and didn't actually read the article. Let's go on. So there's Bernie, there's Marianne. Listen to this. Independent Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont offered tepid praise on Tuesday for Marianne Williamson's 2024 presidential campaign, telling Insider that he expected her to raise very important issues during the campaign. So notice it says here, he told Insider at the Capitol. That tells you that Insider has access to the politicians, because there have been other independent media outlets that have also been at the Capitol and have tried to interview Bernie Sanders, and he runs away from them. Let's go on. Williamson, a self-help author, spiritual leader, and 2020 presidential candidate, is currently the only well-known Democrat to officially launch a presidential campaign. President Joe Biden is widely expected to announce a re-election bid, but has yet to officially do so. Here's the clicker. Like, you didn't even have to go that far down the article to get to the point that a lot of people have missed on social media. Sanders has said he will support Biden if he seeks re-election, and told Insider on Tuesday that he doesn't want to speculate about Williamson's chances. But Williamson endorsed Sanders in 2020 after dropping out of the campaign, and he indicated a respect for her that other Democrats haven't shown. What does this tell you about Bernie Sanders? You see, a lot of people are retweeting that headline and they're leaving that piece out. So people are on Twitter and they're like, Bernie Sanders supports Marianne Williamson's campaign. So I go to the article and I read the article and I'm like, oh, you're just going to leave this piece out where he said that he will support Joe Biden? This is what people are doing right now. People aren't even taking the time to read. Some of them, I think, are doing it on purpose. Some of them, I think, may have read this and want to mislead people and want to hype up Marianne's campaign to make it seem like she has support from Bernie Sanders when she does not. Just because he said he thinks that she'll run a strong campaign doesn't mean he's going to endorse her over Joe Biden. And he's not. He already told you he's going to support Joe Biden. So you need to pay attention to this because you need to see who Bernie Sanders really is. And I say this because, again, it tells you right here. But Williamson endorsed Sanders in 2020 after dropping out of the campaign, which she did. and most candidates did not. So even though Marianne Williamson endorsed Bernie Sanders is not willing to repay the favor and endorse Marianne Williamson. How's that for you? What kind of friend is that? You see what I mean? Again, at the end of the day, he's only willing to go so far, and he knows there's a line that he's not supposed to cross. That's not stabbed in the back. That's stabbed in the front. He goes on to say, I know Marianne, I'm sure she's going to run a strong campaign and raise very important issues, but I'm still going to support Joe Biden. And like I said, if Medicare for all is his number one issue, why would Bernie Sanders support the candidate that does not support Medicare for all? If he really cared about everyone having health care in this country. Bernie Sanders made a lot of money during these presidential runs, and Bernie Sanders wrote another book, okay? Because at the end of the day, I feel like that's what this is all about. Let's go on. Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts, by contrast, was firm in her support for Biden when asked about Williamson's campaign. See how they try to phrase this? Was firm in her support. Bernie was firm in his support too. You just heard him in the video. He goes on to say, I think that President Biden is going to be the Democratic nominee and he's going to get reelected. Now that's coming from Elizabeth Warren. So again, people are looking at this headline and they're running with it all over Twitter. People were so excited. Yay! Oh my God! I can't believe it. This is great. This is fantastic. Didn't even read the article. An insider knows that. That's why they chose that title.